you very much indeed, David. And thank you for inviting me to speak. I've found the last two speakers quite fascinating. And I have to admit, I do not profess to be a...
Alan, could you activate your image, please? We can't see you.
Where do I do that? Start video, is that it?
Yes.
Is that right?
Gosh, there's an amazing astral view of
Yes, I can see. I don't know what's going on.
If necessary, just leave that so we can get an astral impression of Alan Cox.
All right, okay. It'd have to be different for me, wouldn't it, David? It couldn't be normal. As I was saying, I was totally fascinated by the last two speakers who know their subjects extremely well. For my part, I don't profess to be, shall we use the term scholar at all. Everything that I'm about is what has happened to me personally. I'll start back to give you an idea about myself. When I was around about the age of 12, I was at the back garden of our house on a Sunday morning. And this young man came out of the back door and came down to me. And he was holding a dowser, a pendulum. And it was swinging around. And I said to him, how do you do that? Because he wasn't actually physically moving it with his hand. And he said, you'll find out one day, Alan. And he just walked off and went back in the house. And anyway, I went back in the house and he'd gone. And I said to my mum and dad, I said, who's that man who came out? And he said, there's been nobody here, Alan. So that was my first, shall we say, introduction into spirit. Then nothing really happened for a good many years. I always felt as if I'd been protected. That's an odd feeling. I'd walk home from Boys Brigade when I was about 14 and look up at the stars and felt as if I was being looked after. And then, you know, you grow up, you go to work, you get married. Unfortunately, you get divorced. And then I met Anne. We've been together 32 years this year. And I feel that I was probably meant, yes, I was meant to meet her, because from there on, life completely changed. Well, going back to 1996, there was a program on the television, Channel 5, and it was about people going into other people's houses and clearing bad energies. And this one guy on there is a very dear friend of ours now, David Ashworth, was on, and I felt I needed to get in touch with him because what had happened was that I was at work and Anne was in the house by herself, and she was actually pushed down the stairs from top to the bottom by an unseen force, and she broke a wrist. And it was in the days before people really got mobile phones over here. And I got home from work at about 7 o'clock on the evening, and this happened about 12:30 of the lunch. And she'd sat all that time at the bottom of the stairs with a bag of frozen peas on her wrist, saying she wasn't actually in pain. Anyway, long story short, went to the hospital, got her sorted out or plastered up. And then that following week, this program was on Channel 5. David came to our house, did a clearing, invited us up to his house where he used to live in Manchester. And he opened me up to my spirit guide. And that's when my journey started in 1996. I spent 4 years trying to understand what on earth I was supposed to do with this enlightenment, if you want to call it that. And I felt I couldn't do an ordinary job anymore, and no great money behind me or anything. I said to Anne, I can't do this anymore. I've got to follow the spiritual path. And she said, well, you've got to do what you've got to do. I handed my notice in, and yeah, the journey began in 1996. Well, lots of things have happened since then. One of the big things I would say that happened was that there was another program on TV good many years ago, and it was a documentary on Channel 4 with David Icke and his wife at the time, Pamela. And there was a lot of things that he was saying that made a lot of sense to me about reptilians, about giants. I suppose I now know the name Nephilim. And I thought I'd got to get in touch with him. I found an email address. I wrote to him, gave him my email address, my phone number, home phone, mobile phone I got by then. Anyway, about 2 weeks later, I always remember it was a Tuesday evening, about 8:15, that's how much it's in my mind, Pamela phoned me saying that David would like to see you, like to talk to you. He feels that you could help him. Long story short, Anne and I went to the Isle of Wight where David lives and cleared him of the reptilians that were causing him great problems at the time. And cleared his house, went to his publishing office, and even went to his ex-wife's house and did the clearing. And there was a lot of bad things potentially happening with people threatening to sue him, etc. And after the clearing, getting rid of these reptilians, which were attacking him at the base of the neck, all the problems kind of went away. So these reptilians, these negative forces, they can bring, they can bring a lot of problems to somebody. Now, whether you agree with what David says or what he does, etc., and his books, whether you believe it or not, all I can say to you is what happened that day, and it was quite a revelation. And then obviously going to doing different events, different spiritual events. And there's lots of things that happened that you can't, shall we say, fully explain other that spirit was at work. At one time, Anne and I were at the up in Scotland. It was in the summer, in the June, and we were about 9 o'clock in the evening. Obviously, it was complete broad daylight, and we was going back to where we were staying, and we was passing Culloden Moor, and I had this overwhelming urge: we've got to go on the moor. So we pulled into the car park, and of course everything was closed up, but you could walk onto the moor. I remember there was a caravanette and there was a motorbike there, and that was all. Anyway, walking onto the moor, the people who were there were walking off. So we was left by ourselves. And there was this lectern, and I was reading about what had gone on there in 1746, the great, say, fight between the English and the Scots, and carried on around. Each field, shall we say, is sectioned off almost like the size of a football pitch. And we'd gone right round to the other side, and I was looking back at the lectern, and Anne was looking the opposite way at these sheep. And I could see on top of the lectern from the distance, almost like a round brown circle. And it started to move really fast across the lectern, left to right, left to right. It was just quite amazing. And I was saying to Anne, look, please have a look, what's going on here? And then it started to rise up. And there was this man, this Scottish man with a massive beard. And he moves to the side of the lectern, and he's dressed in warrior gear, I suppose, from the 1746. And I'd moved, at that point, I'd moved on 83 warriors, fighters, who asked me to move them on. And I didn't realize until that moment he was like the head one of them. And he was angry. He was actually, you could, even though you couldn't hear anything, you could see him stamping his feet. And then he turned around and he disappeared. Well, I hadn't witnessed that part of it. We then went back to the car and nothing happened that day, because obviously we're talking about it. And the following day, we decided to go right up to John O'Groats, right, the fathers. You can go up in Scotland. And on the way back down, we went up the coast and come back down central part, really high up, but the road is flat. You could see all the peaks of the mountains in a slight distance. And the road bent round very sharply. It was just two-way traffic. And this juggernaut was coming the opposite way. And there was a big drop down at the side. And on the bend, this blacked out car, you couldn't even tell what model it was overtaking this lorry. And I was braking furiously. And I said to Anne, that's it, we've had it. We've had it. We're going to be killed. I was probably doing about 70, and this lorry was coming. The lorry was blasting his horn, and this car came between me and the lorry. And not trying to exaggerate, there must have been centimeters, inches between the front of our car and the front of the lorry. And off it went. There was nowhere to park. I must have been about a mile before I was able to stop, and I was absolutely shaking. And as I was pulling into park, the vision of this man who was there was so angry and threatening that he was going to get me. And I suppose that's what sticks in my mind very much. But you might call me crazy. It just made me more determined to help the world, to rid the world of these bad energies. You see, bad energies can be people who have passed over. They can be demons, Nephilim, etc., entities that haven't lived like we've lived. So you've got different aspects of what is good and what is bad. What I've found over the years is that a lot of people have come to me who are having so many unexplained things happen to them and needing help, be it physical things that happen, and also with the health needing healing. As David quite rightly says, there are different aspects of healing. Some people call in getting rid of negative energies a healing process, because you're ridding somebody of something that is ruining their lives. Another instance that happened back quite a few years ago, we were down in Cornwall at the Fairy Fest. I'd booked a table, and we were staying at a Premier Inn in Bodmin and going on to Bodmin Moor, where the festival was being held. And on that first morning, if anybody knows the A38 in Cornwall, it's a very fast road, two-way traffic in parts. And before we got to Bodmin, there's a part where you're going slightly downhill, and there was two country lanes either side meeting the main A38. And this small car started to pull out, and almost like the wheel was taken out of my hand, and I was forced over to the wrong side of the road. There was cars coming, but it was almost like they'd stopped, but they hadn't. And this other car came and hit me on the passenger's rear door. I managed to get back over to the right side and stopped, and the car stopped behind. It was a young girl who I found out later, her name was Rachel. And she was in a right state, and she was saying, I've hit you, I'm sorry. I said, look, are you all right? She said, yeah, I am. I said, well, look, that's all that matters. I said, damage, you can be put right. So I said, come on, let's go and have a look. And I had a quick look at the front of her car, and I really couldn't see any problem. And then, I mean, it was a thump. She hit me with a thump. And I looked at my car, and there was no marks on it. And she says, I don't understand it. I said, don't worry about it. She said, well, look, please type my name and address and phone number in case you find anything wrong afterwards. So I got one of my cards, and it had got psychic consultant on it. And I gave her my card with my phone number on, and she just looked at me. I think it really freaked her out. And anyway, the following day, I get a phone call from my father. She lived on the farm with her mum and dad, saying, you know, Rachel I've never known her lie. She's a lovely girl. And she told me what happened. It was hard to believe. But I went out to have a look at a car, and the only thing that you could see had happened is that the one headlight had been slightly pushed back. She says, I can't believe what happened, and thank you so much for being so kind to her. And if you're ever this way, please call in. He said, you can have a meal with us. And that, what's the explanation for that? Some people will say, I don't believe it. I can only tell you what happened. It's quite amazing what can happen, good and bad. I've come across people who have had awful things happen to them. That they've had extremely bad health. They've been to the doctors can't find anything wrong with them. As a last resort, they found out about me. I've gone to see them, and my spirit guides, using my energy and me using theirs, have cleared them of the bad energies with them, and the health has gone better. Now, what's the explanation for that? I don't say for one moment that it is me, because that would be wrong. All I know is that I get used as a vessel, and there's that many things that have happened that I could probably do with a couple of hours to try and explain. I feel very blessed to have been sent on this pathway, even though it can be a great challenge. And meeting David was a big thing as well, who actually put me on the road to where I am now, being clergy. So those are just a few examples of what I'm about. I don't profess to know everything like the experts, the two gentlemen who's been on before, but that is what I'm about, and that is what I try to do. I try to do right by everybody. I think most people try to do that anyway, don't they? But it's been an incredible journey, and I believe I'm just up to about 20 minutes now. So thank you very much indeed for listening. I hope it's been of interest to you.
Alan, you're a star as always. That casual Jimmy Young, gentle way of loving the audience and getting them in the palm of your hand. You
Is
don't,
that right?
young man. I know what's going on. What we'll do, I think, because I've just been told we won't be able to preserve that astral image of you for the DVD, we'll get a still to cover the time you were speaking of you in your togs and sort of your clergy collar, because you will look even more handsome when we do that. Oh, my dear friends, yeah, some of the panelists are talking from an experiential angle, a cumulative experience of dealing with giant energies of all different sorts throughout the years. Obviously, Alan is coming from that experiential angle. If there are any questions at all, and I imagine there might be a lot, please keep them brief, because remember, we have a schedule to keep to, as imperfect as that is. Please answer now by going to your toolbar and pressing the reactions button.
May I just mention that I have a...
David Wallington is coming up to ask you a question, and I'm waiting for my team to sort that out, because I think the entire country knows I do not know the slightest thing about technology.
Right, okay.
David, I am being told you need to unmute, my boy, because we won't be able to hear you.
Just done it. Hello, Reverend Cox, how are you?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you. And thank you for wanting to ask me a question, David. Thank you.
I would also like to say I purchased your book and it's very fascinating, so congratulations.
Oh, thank you for that. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Just one question, not to be picky in any way whatsoever. During your work, have you actually come across Nephilim yourself? Because I think you could possibly be best placed out of anyone to say, not only can I talk about it, I've actually experienced. Have you come across Nephilim at all in your work?
Yes, I have, David, but I didn't know the term Nephilim. Right. Right. So, but yes, I've come up against, shall we say, giants, and I've had, shall we say, like warriors to help me to disperse them. You know, like gladiators and centurions, they've come to me in spirit to help me. So yes, I have. Also, strangely enough, I found that the smaller demons, shall we say, the smaller negative bad energies, have been in my work been a greater foe than the Nephilim. I've had a lot more dealings with the smaller entities. They have a way of working on people. I mean, if anybody has had the experience that they can't sleep at night and they're tired in the day and they can't work things out as good as they know that they can do, that's one form to make people so people can't sleep properly and then tired in the day. That's one of the things. And talk about watchers. Yeah, I've seen little red dots in the night as if they've been watched.
No.
So yeah, I've experienced a lot of these different kind of entities, David.
Okay. Thank you for answering my question, and best of luck and health to you and the team as well. Thank you very much.
That's very kind of you, David. Thank you for asking.
Thanks.
Alan, I think it's time to confess that we're hoping for a gathering of good spirits in this project and good energies. Certainly, we're beginning to explore those pathways as a group. I need to confess Valentine's Hall is many things. Valentine's Chapel, as it will be soon. Not only are we an MCC oasis, not only are we exploring liberal Catholic theology, which of course is linked with theosophy in many ways, we are also a Gnostic group. I mean, my principal ordination is actually as a Valentinian, and I had the honor of receiving that in Italy, which is a long story, and therefore is also a Valentinian as one of my right-hand men, at the risk of sounding censorious, in this country. How are we interpreting that? The knowledge of spirit, the knowledge of energies, you know, allowing humanity to take a step up. You know, faith is so important, isn't it, nowadays? Faith that will get through the day, faith that everything will be okay, you know, even when it looks like it's not going to be. But, you know, there's another step, there's a step beyond faith, which is knowledge of these things. And certainly we're hoping to explore that angle, but on a different part of the show.
Can I just quickly say something, David?
Yeah.
It's not by coincidence that my picture isn't there properly, my video, right? These negative energies will use technology sometimes to create these kind of problems. So it didn't surprise me. One little bit.
You are shameless. You know you're trying to get us to put your most handsome photo when it comes to the demon.
Yes. How did you guess, David?
I'm wagging my finger at you. We'll leave it there. The next question is from John Keaveney. John, could you please unmute and ask your question now?
Thanks, David. And hi, Alan. I love the astral image. I was going to say, Nephilim are trying to stop you get through, but I'm sure it's not a coincidence. If you don't mind, just quickly, the reptilian entity you described for David Icke.
Yes.
You know it was reptilian, and do you have a feeling of where it? How did it? Could you describe it? And also, do you have a feeling of where it came from? Because reptilian is very provocative. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, the thing is about the reptilian image, John, is the fact that if you want to use the expression "the devil," I know some people don't like that expression, but the devil works in lots of different ways and with lots of different images. So a lot of people are frightened of reptiles, the ones that actually really walk this earth. So it's a good image to put there to work on somebody, to frighten somebody. So when I was doing it, I literally saw it almost like an alligator or crocodile, that type of image. That was what I was seeing at the time. But there's also all kinds of images, you know, spiders, snakes. They are all kind of forms, images to try and frighten somebody. What must be said is that once the good, the shall we say, the God-given, the universal positive energy is at play, these bad energies, they're cowards. They go, they can be removed. But they work on the premise that to get their way, they work on the fear, John. Does that make sense to you? Hello?
Is that okay, Mr. Keaveney? Does that answer your question?
Sorry, the administrator wouldn't let me unmute myself, but yes, thank you, Alan.
Okay.
It's a learning for all of us if we have that problem. Thanks.
Thank you for asking questions, John.
Thank you, Alan.
Well, as I say, our Valentine's Hall is not only working as a place that's open to absolutely everybody. Everyone is welcome. We're also looking at religious experimentation, exploring those supernal, paranormal, and I would say supernatural realities around us. These are exciting times. Alan, thank you very, very much for your contribution today. Obviously, your details and the book that you've written will be mentioned in our publication later in the year. Please stick around, because remember, we have some breakout sessions where people can speak freely and we're not restricted to the time schedule. But thank you very, very much, my friend, and we'll speak again soon.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, David. Thank you very much.